Hey robots! Welcome to my take on the strategic oil dot technique, and I'm doing it on a MK44 AMMOknight from the Maschinen Krieger property. And a big welcome to our new supporters. Thank you very much for joining. Now don't worry if this particular genre isn't your thing. The reason I chose this model was that it's a perfect canvas. It has very broad surfaces that don't actually have a lot of detail on it, which we'll find a lot on Maschinen Krieger models. And it's a perfect opportunity to show off this technique, because I did in fact do this on the Grimoire model, and many of you asked me about it, so this is one of the processes, but it's actually better to show you on this model than it was with the Grimoire. Now this particular technique, it's not something you want to do on every model. It's better for, say, medium to large models as a way to enhance and add visual interest to your base color. It helps to augment our finish and create additional visual interest. Now today's video is a Patreon exclusive. It's just for you guys. I don't have any plans to release any of this, not in part to YouTube. So the style of today's video is a little more relaxed. I've listened to the feedback. A number of you have mentioned to me that you'd like a little more time for the subject to have room to breathe. I really like that expression. So I've let it run a lot more in real time in places, and I've planned this one not so much as a strict hardcore tutorial, but more as if we're sitting down together at the bench and working through it together in real time. So it doesn't make it super long though. I think total video is about 32 minutes, so it should be a good length. Please let me know what you think. If you have any questions, please hit me up in the Patreon app. I always check everything, or in our private Discord room. That will work as well. And just one more thing. Sorry, my color and voice is a little bit off today. I've had a really nasty throat infection, but I've decided, I kept working, I kept producing, because I'm made of really stern stuff. 1980s Lego. Okay, thanks guys. I'll have a new video for you ready soon. See you later, bye. Okay, today let's oil dot all the things. I thought that would be much funnier when I said it in my head. And as soon as I said it, I was like, oh, instant regret. What I want to do today is use oil brushes to oil dot this, use the oil dot technique. So I've finished doing what I would consider advanced chipping, and it's looking pretty good. It's quite close to the vision I wanted. It's quite heavily damaged. They tend to stand out a little bit. They're a little bit stark. Some of the chips are stark against this. So doing oil dot technique, what we're going to do is place strategic dots around the model of different colors of oil paint to both accentuate the base colors, but also help blend in some of the effects we've put over the top. For this process, I'll be using these. Now don't panic, that's a big whopping bag of oil brushes. You don't need to buy all of these. What I'll do is I'll give you an overview of the most basic colors that I believe are the must-haves, and then I'll show you a couple that would be nice to haves that you can add over time. Okay, let's kick off. Here are my list of must-haves. Now again, you don't have to run out and buy them all straight away. I would suggest maybe just a couple, like white, yellow. God, it's really hard for me to break them down from this because they're basically the primaries. You can see I got the primaries of yellow, red, and blue in, additionally with green and a couple of the starship colors, white and black for the extremities. So the reason I call this my must-have list is that I will use these no matter the finish, no matter what color scheme I'm working with. I will probably 99% use all of these colors on it, and then I'll add some nice to haves that Ammo were nice enough to send over to me to also give ones that are more of an environmental color, if that makes sense. But for this primary purpose, let's stick with these ones and apply them in strategic places over the model. Let's go. Working with oil paints like this, it's a really good idea to set your model up onto a base. I've stuck it onto this plinth. It's not really a plinth, it's a pencil holder from a local cheap shop, dollar type store place called Spotlight that sells a bunch of arts crafts type stuff. Cost me about $5. It's really useful. I think it's probably a really good size for Maschinen Krieger projects like this. And the reason is, with oil paints, we do want to keep it pretty hands-free. They take a long time to dry, and I was purposely fingerprinting this guy at the beginning in the texture stages, but now that I'm putting paint on, it's probably a better idea to keep it pretty try to keep the fingerprints to a minimum. start from the lighter end of the spectrum. I'll go with white. Very simply, it's a lot like, like highlighting something. I'm going to go with the lighter oil colors to accentuate the upper facing areas of the model. It's really that simple. So I'm going to go with white on the top. And oil dot technique is called that because you really do place a bunch of oil dots around your model. I need to fit a couple more colors in here, somewhat randomly, but this is a pretty easy sort of process. We don't have to go too hard. I'm mostly going to streak them around, so leave some space for the darker colors to put underneath. After you've done this a couple of times, you'll get exactly what I mean. I'm not going to put any white streaks on the face because that needs to be, you can see it's blowing out the camera a little bit. Oh, that's going to be a thick one. It's blowing out my camera a little bit, so I'll need to tone that one down a little bit. A little bit of a chunky spot. And I'll continue like this around the model and be back with the next color. And with a good number of white dots placed around the model, next I'll go with yellow. And I'll be placing them near the white dots, but also ever so slightly randomized. That's something to always be thinking about with our model, is to make sure things are somewhat randomized. This is a perfect application for these paints. The quick start stop and the ability to dot them on with this applicator really does make them ideal for this job. Sometimes I place a little bit too much because I'm putting the side of the brush on in my impatience. Let's see how that turns out. It should be fine. But with the amount of damage and weather on this guy, I think it's going to be difficult to really overdo it. We should be okay. You can see I'm not putting a lot of the brighter colors on the lower half. Again, I'm developing a little bit of a gradient here and putting more of these type of the brighter colors as a highlight on the upper surfaces. I try not to overthink this step. It's I think the name is better than the effect. I see the name mentioned a lot. Oh, I use the oil dot technique. It's good. I tend not to do it in such a overt way like this when I'm working myself, but I thought for tutorial purposes, this does make it a lot easier to understand. This is one of the really cool things I'm finding about making extensive tutorials like this, is that it forces me to really look at my own craft, analyze what's working and what's not, but also to put it together into a more logical process for you. So I'm also kind of learning more and a better way to think about things along the way, which I think is wonderful. Okay, let's continue that around. Now, red is a particularly powerful color, so I'm quite careful with it. I'll use it near a couple of the big gouges. Not too much, just a couple of places. It can overpower your model very quickly, so let's be very careful with it. Not all of them, we don't want them to be too samey, but in a few key areas, there we go, we can add it in. Of course, on the large red, that can work. Now, green is a powerful mid-tone for this model, so I'll add this in to accentuate a bunch of these quite green areas. I know, right? Green for green. Crazy. Working down the model. Green patches in. We can also put gradients across our model this way. We can have some areas with more of a green bias and other areas with whatever color we'd like. In the beginning, I wouldn't worry about that too much. It seems like a lot to think about, so don't. It's easy for me to say, but I really mean that. Don't worry about that one too much. One of the good things about this technique is that it will work even if quite randomized, and our main goal is simply to be adding interest. So let's just do that. Next, actually I'm going to skip a couple of the colors and go with blue. Blue is a very powerful shadow. Fine art, different people over the years, they've used blue and purple very effectively. So for places like this that should be a little bit more shadowed, I'll add some touches of blue. There we go. And back here. Cool. Maybe one on the leg here, yep, cool. Now one of our everlasting favorites, Starship Base Sludge. This will be a really good one for toning down some of the harshness of the white here and helping it to blend in a little bit more with the rest of the model. For in-person viewing, I think the colors is good. The one of the differences would be the photography becomes quite difficult to capture the contrast. The white is so bright compared to the rest of it, so it makes it a little difficult. Now one challenge I'm going to have is some of these dots are going to be hard to spot on my camouflage because it's quite effective for good and for bad. I might take a break in between this. It's actually quite tiring. I tend to overthink things a lot. So rather than rush this too quickly, take a break in between as well. And come back and have another look and make sure I've got some extra colors in the right places. Coming in now with Starship Filth. This is one of the colors that I think will really tie this together. It's a greenish grey tinge. So that's that's what I would, if I had to call this model one color all over, it's this muddy sort of color that is Starship Filth. It's like a dark green umber sort of color. So putting this at the lower extremities to help increase that dark light to top gradient will work for us. It's perfect sort of color for this. I'm a big fan of this this color, this tint. So it's a really good one. Super useful for a lot of applications like this. Okay, we're almost there. Now, having given this a really good look over, I'm going to add a couple more of my nice to have colors. I've chosen dark brown. I'm going to do some rust as well. Rust. Yeah, it won't pick up both. Sorry guys. And I'll also add, no, I was considering adding some dust, but I won't. I'll leave that until a little bit later, and we can do that at another stage. So dark brown, I want to split up the feet a little bit. So I'm going to add, instead of Starship Filth on one foot, okay, a bit on both, I want a little bit of color variance. It's a big-ish model. I mean, it's a big little model. There's a lot of surface area and details in here that I think will benefit from a slightly more varied color palette. So some shadow, and that will help break it up just a little bit more. The normal MK suits are a little bit smaller by volume than this guy. This guy is pretty beefy, he's pretty chunky. I mean, he's quite a bit taller, he's about 50% taller, but it's the volume that will make a big difference. Now the cool thing about this process is that it's not a one-off. You can come back and redress this if you so desire. You know, you can come back and say, oh, needs more yellow, needs more white. That is the cool thing. You could come back and do this a number of times. You probably won't want to. Just watching this, for some of you, is probably enough. I get that. You know, wow, I can't believe you go to this much trouble, Link. Well, you know, these complicated finishes, they don't do themselves. Rust. Rust should feature somewhat heavily with this one. This won't be the last time, excuse me. Of course it's the first. Wow, sometimes I just babble. This won't be the last time adding this rust color. I'm going to add it to a bunch of the large gashes and damaged areas, because to really stand out on this finish, it's going to require quite a bit of work. There we go. Whoop, 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 whoop. That'll come off. It's a good thing about the oil paints is that they will come off and they'll dry, and maybe that will make it a feature. Okay, almost there. A couple more. Bit of rust up here. Okay, I'm starting to get all excited to get into it. Yeah, we'll come back and we can do this a bunch more times, just to make sure I get some cool gradients into it. Now, let's be really honest, Link. I don't think I've ever done this much oil dotting before. Because, you know, I'm putting in a video, so I've really got to do it. I'm super curious how this will turn out. It could be absolutely nasty, but so far so good. Oh, don't forget them, dummy. So, hey look, no lunch. I'm getting all high. Don't forget to do them. That's really important. I can probably show this whole process on just those things. That would have been funny. Okay, there's before on the left and after on the right. So quickly now, I'll take you through. You can see most of this process. I'll take you around the main model, of course. I'll give you a very quick overview, but the main points of this technique are visible just from doing this one piece, side armor on the model. Nice, clean, dry brush. That's right, John, we're going in dry. This is sat on the model for maybe an hour, 2 hours. So the working time of this is hopefully wonderfully long. We'll soon test it out. Now, one of the key things, I hear people tell me, oh, sorry, we've had a bunch of days of rain, so if you can hear the birds going crazy, it's because it's just fined up and the birds are out feeding now. And I mean, they're not the birds we keep, these are just the birds outside where we live. It's Australia, and there's just, I'm here at the Gold Coast and there's tropical birds everywhere. It's beautiful, but they can be a little bit noisy. Now, what I hear from my mates is that sometimes the colors all run together and they don't feel that there was a lot of point in doing this. I understand that. What I tend to do is with vertical places, I'll run down, and then with horizontal places, I'll do the stab. It's really that simple. So, and I clean my brush each time in between the shots. I'll move that into camera so you can see it. Okay, I hope that's not off-putting. I've kept it out of focus so that it's not too much in the way. Now, very simply, I'll go with downward strokes to keep the brush relatively clean. I might stick with the top half. It's not a super set in stone process, but I can stick with the top half like this so that it's mostly the brighter colors. And I personally like to clean my brush each and every time. You can see, you can kind of see a bit of paint's come off there. And that, I believe, helps to stop mixing all of the colors every single time. Now, our intention, of course, here is not to produce the final effect, but more to increase the depth of the piece and the effect of the patina of cool oil paints. These are getting a little dry. One of the cool things is, if it does get a bit too dry, I'll swap out for a more beat up brush. I'll keep this one relatively clean. Here's a harsher, slightly nastier brush for this kind of duty, and I'll push it in a little harder. There we go. Get more of a mix going. Cool. So yes, I will change up. There's your perfect world technique, and then there's what's actually happening technique. I've had lunch and I've done a bunch of other things. I'm not super pedantic about this process, as you'll see. It's just a cool thing to do over the top. There we go, cool, done. Now already, yep, that's a nice basis for a lot of cool effects in the future. You can see there's a bit of streaking across the ace of spades there. Red gradient here, bit of green and yellow here, and brown over here. It's looking, I think there's another spot over here we haven't touched yet. Cool. Done. So let's have a look at them together. Lots of cool variation and variance in there. Okay, similar process here on our main model. I'll go from, I've come back to, what am I with? I'm with my nasty brush. You could tell I had no idea which brush I had then, can't you? I'll start from the top, start doing some downward streaks here. It looks like the paint has started to dry. These are pretty quick. Nice downward strokes, initiate some vectors. But also make sure we get pretty good coverage. Break up the white a little bit more. Rock it back a little. I've purposely left this as an oil-free zone so that I can put my hands on it. Start working it in. You can hear there's a lovely bit of texture in there. If I don't like some of these effects, or they get a bit too harsh for my liking, what I can do is I can remove them with odorless enamel thinners, and if that doesn't quite budge them, we can go straight into like a mineral turpentine, a stronger version of it. Cool. And so far, I'm liking that a lot. It's almost a horizontal piece, so I haven't got it in the best angle there, and this looks quite rough, doesn't it? And we'll get a bit of the stabber action in here. Blend these colors a little more, and it should take off some of the harshness of the white. And I've been pretty careful to use a harmonious blend here so that it mixes well with the rest of the model. So not so much streaking action here. In fact, this has kind of turned out more, it's more of an aggressive active filter, if that makes sense. It's one of the reasons, you know, a lot of the words, the names, all the different stuff for our model. Basically, when we worked on these in the studio, we weren't saying these names. Now I will apply the filter. We were just getting it done. So there's making your model look cool and making your model look cool. That's really all there is, isn't there? Okay, that's not bad. And it's taken a lot of the white off, which should allow us to photograph this guy a lot better. Cool. Yeah, I'm liking that a lot now. I think that's... Okay, now that's a big chunk of white on the arm. I'm wondering how that's going to go. We may have to take some of this off. Often, it's all about that recovery, isn't it? sometimes these kind of little mess ups, they end up being really cool opportunities. Work, work, work. Cool. That's certainly taken a bunch of the harshness off the chips, integrated them a little. If I need to redress them, I can come back and we could do that again. But yeah, that's come out pretty well. They don't look so strictly and harshly just painted on. They do look like they've been on there for a while. Okay. Shoulder pad's going to be an important detail. I might go with the cleaner brush and do a clean sweep down on this one. Cool. Nice. I'll come back for the harsh one for a bit of horizontal work. Now these sides are quite blank. Let's come in. Nice downward vector. Work this in a little. I've probably let these dry a little bit longer than I usually would. But when your wife makes you lunch and you've miscalculated your timing, you roll with it. That was a good streak. Okay, now clean that up mostly. Let's work these in from the top. We want a notion of streaking left behind, but we don't want it to be too obvious or blatant. Just enough so it looks like he's been out in the weather. Various things have happened and rained down on him, and there we go. Cool. I may have oversold this to you, but that's largely it. We're going to work around, blend these in before we move on to other weathering steps. As you can see, a little bit of the red has stained in here. A little bit of a streak has developed under there, but we'll go back and we will redress them next. I should show you one more. The effects on the red here. This should come out quite well. Because we've got the white up here. And then the red over here. This was a very flat paint, it was acrylic, so it stained it more. I want it a little bit more faint. There we have it. Cool. That's exactly. It turned out a little bit better than I thought it could. Okay, one last section I'll show you, this side of the leg. Move through the rust spots. Oh, cool. Wow, those birds. This is a good opportunity to show the stamp too. On the feet, because they're more of a horizontal, we can't expect as much streaking. So I'll blend these in with more of a stippling motion. Which you might see more of our, if you're doing things like a tank, on the upper hull, this is how I would blend it in. That is improving the colors already. Cool. Hey, thanks for watching guys. I hope this video gave you a detailed look at my version of the strategic oil dot technique. It's not something you will do on every model, but especially useful on those with large surface sections without too many details, as you'll often see on these Maschinen Krieger models. Here are some close-ups where I've tried to point out the differences this step has made, which greatly enhances the overall effect of a detailed and interesting finish with notions of realism and one-to-one scaling. Okay, more soon, and thanks always guys. See ya! Big thanks to Hobbyco and Little Robot. I do my best to buy from and support local to keep our money in our communities and to empower events. Huge shout out to the Rocket Punch Brobot team. Ivan, MB, Grant, Con, Jack, RJ, Simon, Robert, Kelso, Kevin, David, Derek, Alan and Nilos. This episode was supported by our patrons. Your support empowers me and makes all this happen. Thanks guys!